Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about Aristotle's metaphysics. My biggest critique of Aristotle's metaphysics is that the systemization and the categorization of everything, while it can be useful in understanding life and be useful to a certain degree, in a paradoxical universe it can also seriously inhibit our understanding of life, our understanding of the essence of the whole. And to give an example of this, I'm going to start with Aristotle's doctrine of the four causes, which is his system of philosophy. Now, so we'll start with the formal cause. What is the essence of a person? What is the essence of a man? Now, I've given this a lot of thought, and I haven't come up with an answer as to what is the essence of a man, what is the essence of a human being, what is the qualities and the characteristics that we share that makes us so different from everything else. What are the qualities and characteristics that are individual to us, that no other animal has, that we have that no other animal has. Like, it's not bipedalism, because a chicken walks, as Diogenes pointed out, a chicken walks on 2 feet. And Aristotle said that we are a rational animal. But that's not universal. I've met loads of people that are not rational at all. Cats are more rational than most people I know. So this is not the essence of a human. To say that we're a rational animal, because, as I say, this is not unique to humans. Cats are more rational than most human beings. So I say he's wrong in this. And I still have to think about this some more. What is the essence of a human being? Because really we are nature personified, so it's very hard to 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 find universal characteristics and that makes us individual and unique from everything else and separate from nature. Then the second cause is the material cause. In his doctrine of four causes, the second cause is the material cause. What is the physical substratum? What are we made of? Well, that again is quite a philosophical question, because, like, you could say, like, well, we are a configuration of atoms. We are made of stars. We're made of we're made up of the elements, carbon, nitrogen, etc. But so is every other animal. So is every other animal. They all have a heart, a brain, a digestive system. So that's not unique to us either. And then you could say we're a composition of the finite and the infinite. We're matter and form. But then it it leads us down another road. What is form? We can understand what matter is. We can understand what matter is. As I say, it's a combination of the elements. We can understand the molecular structure, but what is form? And we could say it's matter and antimatter, matter and energy, but ultimately everything is energy. And then this energy has different ways of manifesting itself. So what is form? And you could say, like, and that's different for every single one of us, because we all have a different form. And we all have a different form, and the form, or we could say the universe as a whole, impacts on every one of us in a different way. And I'll talk about that more when I come to the definition of the soul. Because, as I say, to make a generalization, or to say that there's a universal form, I don't agree with this. So to say, what is the physical substratum? I say this is different for every single one of us. We're all unique. The efficient cause, the agency through which change occurs. Now, it's very, very hard to quantify the agency through which change occurs, because there's so many variables through which change occurs. Everything you eat, everything you ingest, everything you inject, everything you smoke will all determine the nature of change. And the quantity of how much you eat and how much you smoke and how much you digest or ingest will also determine the nature of change. How much sugar you ingest, how much cigarettes you smoke, how much if you say take psychedelics, how much psychedelics you take. This will all determine the nature of change. But then there's other things determine the nature of change. How you apply yourself to certain disciplines like philosophy. This will determine the nature of change. how you apply yourself to say a garden and your knowledge of gardening, this will determine the nature of change. How you impose your will on say a garden, or so say a garden designer will determine the nature of change using his knowledge of gardening, or imposing his will on a garden will determine the nature of change. The same can be for an architect, or somebody with a knowledge of architecture, or art. For example, this will all, you know, this will all determine the nature of change. There are so many variables that determine the nature of change, but possibly the biggest factor in determining the nature of change is our thoughts and our feelings, over which we've no control. But if we learn how to respond to our thoughts and imagine and manage our emotions, we can learn to determine the nature of change. And this is free will. But most people don't do this. Most people don't focus on what it is within their control. They don't learn how to respond to their thoughts. That they don't learn that they can't control their thoughts, but all they can control is the response to their thoughts. And if you don't learn that you can't control your thoughts, but you can control your response to your thoughts, then you don't determine the nature of change. But my point is that if you learn how to respond to your thoughts and manage your emotions, then you can better determine the nature of change. And this is what I think philosophy is all about, learning how to understand life so that we can determine the nature of change. But philosophy, of course, has been reduced to teaching a dogmatic understanding of Aristotle. Not even understanding Aristotle, or not understanding life, but a dogmatic interpretation of Aristotle. This is what Aristotle meant. But really, like, for example, to say that Aristotle said that we are a rational social animal. So to say, what did Aristotle mean by the formal cause? Oh, we are a rational social animal. But this is not true. So it's a dogmatic interpretation of Aristotle. And it's not using philosophy for what philosophy is meant for, a basis for reason. It's the creation of concepts. Like I said before, that this is a simulation, that our objective reality is a simulation. But I've changed my position on this in relation to this. And I say that our objective reality is a construct. It's a construct. And that if we learn to, and all we have of this construct is concepts, these concepts. But if we learn to question these concepts and learn to question every concept, and this is the purpose of philosophy, to question every concept, we can rewrite the narrative. We can write a different narrative, because if we don't learn to question every concept, then our reality is created for us by people like, for example, like, they sort of have reduced philosophy to as I say, a knowledge of what Aristotle said, what John Locke said, what was his interpretation of reality, what was his concept of this, what was his concept of God, what was his concept of I, what was his concept of mind. But yet people don't use the philosophy to establish their own concepts, their own values, to define their own morality, so they don't actually create their own reality. But my point is that we can create our own reality by questioning the concepts and rewriting the narrative for this construct. That if we change our mind, that if we use our mind, of course we'd have to define our concept of mind, but if we use our mind, we can rewrite the construct, we can change the construct. In other words, we can create our own reality and not have reality created for us by for example, like, well, the understanding of life seems to be have been handed over to the discipline of science now, which of course, like, psychiatry and psychology is now a part. So they say, like, that they understand the human being, the human psyche, but the reality is that they don't, because they don't have a concept for a soul. They don't understand that we are matter and form. They just treat us as matter, as things in and of themselves, of which we are not. We're a part of nature and cannot be separate from it. So in order to understand the human psyche, you really would have to understand nature first, or have an understanding of nature. But the systemization and the categorization of it, to say that, to categorize it and say, philosophy and psychiatry are an understanding of the human. This leads to a misconception, a complete lack of understanding. All they have is concepts, and then they impose these concepts upon us. But I'm saying that we can rewrite the narrative. What we're doing is we're allowing them to write the narrative. Like in all science, we're allowing, an academic hierarchy to write our narratives for us. And I'm saying that the academic hierarchy, just because they have established themselves as an authority on the subject, does not mean that they are right. I'm actually saying that they're wrong. They're wrong in a lot of things. But we hand over what is within our control to these people who assert themselves an authority on the subject, and then we allow them to create our reality, to write our narrative. But before I run out of time, I want to talk about the doctrine of final causality, the potentia, to the end towards which something moves, the final state. Now, about this, I want to say that there is no end. There is no end. There is no potential, because everything's in a final state of flux. Everything's in a constant state of flux. Now, to say that there is an end, so for example, like that the acorn, the end is to become an oak tree. Well, the oak tree is not finished, because the oak tree is in a final state of flux. So, for example, to say that we all have a purpose, that we're created for a purpose. To say, for example, that someone is a musician, someone else is a footballer, someone else is a doctor. But this is to put a ceiling on it and put a definitive end on it. So, for example, if someone would say, somebody is a talent to be a footballer, well, their career is over at maybe 33 years of age, and then their career as a footballer is over. What happens then? Is that the end? No, they go on and do something else. They might be a manager. They might go on and do construction. They might go on and do something else. But my point is that in a constant state of flux, you have to understand that even death is not the end. Death is not the end. There is no end. Death is just a part of life. And I'm saying that it's very important to understand that if you understand that there is no end, and constantly focus on determining the nature of change, is more in your interest to constantly determine the nature of change. Now, before I finish on Aristotle, I want to talk about the nature of the soul. Aristotle says there's 3 different types of soul: the nutritive soul, the sensitive soul, and the rational soul. And I want to say I disagree with this. Now, people say that in one particular philosophy lecture I was looking at, they say that in Greek philosophy that there is no definitive answer as to what the soul is. And I'm saying that they're wrong in this. They're wrong because several people have defined the soul, but people just don't understand it. My soul, for example, my concept of the soul, from my perception through the senses, in what I disagree with Kant. Kant said like that we can only perceive life, we can only have knowledge of life through what we perceive through 5 senses. And I say this is not true, because like as I say, like my perception of life, the brain is a sense organ, so my soul impacts on my life and impacts on my interpretation of reality. But what was my concept of the soul? Well, my soul is a dead man. He died just shy of 2,000 years ago. Now, this is again why I say death is not the end. And what is the concept of a man? Because my concept of my soul is that he is a man, regardless of the fact that he died 2,000 years ago. He's still a man, and he identifies as a man. He identifies by a certain name, by a certain personality, and certain characteristics that makes him who he is. Now, we share similar characteristics, but he is still my concept of a man. It's just that he's dead. Now, this also aligns with what Epictetus used to say, that we are a body carrying around a corpse. But I've also come to the conclusion that a lot of people don't have a soul. This is true for some of us, but it's not true for all of us. So, for example, like a lot of people have the same, are the same as other animals, as cats, as dogs, and everything else. They respond to stimuli. My time is up.